Welcome to the Fahrenheit podcast. Today is a special episode. We're going to be digging into some of my own personal journey around mental health, around fostering my own creativity, and really finding my voice as a leader, really taking care of my mental health and making it a priority. And bringing it into my leadership at Fahrenheit has been a cornerstone of both my organization and my career, but a turning point for me in my life. I think we are really sort of taught that our personal and our professional lives should be separate and at odds. And if you've been here, if you've been tuning in, you know that that is not a belief that we at Fahrenheit really live and breathe. We think that our personal life and our professional lives are blended. We feel like there is a blurred line between who we are at home and who we are at work. We are going to experience life together, side by side, and that means the good and the bad. It means that you're going to bring the afterglow of your wedding to work, and you're also going to bring the aftermath of, in my case, your father's passing to work. It means that you're going to wake up some days high on life and experiencing all the beauty and joys that come with it, and you're also going to experience the lows. And how we navigate that, both as entrepreneurs, as creatives, as leaders, as partners, as friends, well, that's the question. Because there is no avoiding it, right? We don't believe that there is a real line, that there is a real wall. And what does it look like to create an environment where you can show up fully as yourself, where you can be proud of who you are and also supported for who you are? The most difficult part of becoming a founder is having a belief, an unwavering belief in your ideas and in your ability to execute them. When I first left Sweetgreen and I was figuring out what I wanted to do next, I explored a lot of different things. And the first thing that I really stumbled upon that piqued my interest was becoming a founder of a CPG product. And it was a venture-backed startup that was being incubated through a VC firm, an early stage VC firm. And they brought me in. I had tons of conversations with them. And I think I was enamored more than anything with this idea at the time of becoming a founder of a company that had a potential massive exit. And I joined the team. We spent about a year building this company. And throughout the process, when we were raising money, I kept getting these questions from investors, some of which had known me in the earlier days of my career, around my ability to lead as the CEO. No one was questioning my ability to do marketing, whether it was social media or influencer, campaign, content, creative, that was all fine. But where people started to ask me questions was around my ability to run operations, finance, fundraise, right? Like really be the CEO of the company and of the team. The irony was that for my career, I had not only built every team that I had been on successfully, right? I think building teams and cultivating talent is something that I was successful at from a very early age and kind of became known for. But I also was running my own marketing budgets, my own P&Ls. So it wasn't that I didn't have some relevant experience, but the truth was I wasn't a man and I didn't go to business school. And I felt like it was this constant question that I kept getting asked when I was fundraising. A couple of investors actually with whom I really respect not only told me their concerns, but told me that during the process of getting references and referrals, they had gotten the same feedback about me from either people I had previously worked with or people in my network, right? Farryn is great. She'll be an amazing co-founder, but as the CEO who's really leading the business, there's a question mark. And I really doubted myself, and it really made me question, can I do this and can I lead? Cut to about a year later, I started Fahrenheit as a bit of a happy accident. I started consulting, one client turned into 8, and next thing I knew, I was running a small agency all on my own. About a year later, I went to Tony Robbins, and in the middle of Tony Robbins, he teaches you a lot about limiting beliefs and these stories that we tell ourselves. And in this moment, not to sound cheesy, but it sort of was an aha moment. I said, not only am I successfully running this company on my own with no help, but I am running accounting, I am running finance, I am running HR and legal, and I am doing all of it on my own. And we were already profitable. From day one, we were profitable. And every single month that we were profitable, I never once gave myself credit. And I never, ever once gave myself really, I think, the confidence to believe that I could until this moment where I looked back at what I had accomplished in my first year. And I think recognized that everything everyone had said about me was not true. People's doubt in me or their lack of understanding about me was not truth. It was just words. They were just words. And I think that when you're a founder and you're growing and you're building, you have to take people's words into consideration, but you cannot let them be the answer to the problem. Because the truth is, only you know what you're capable of. And when you are surrounded by people who are going to question your abilities, they're not championing your strengths. So I think the hardest thing as a founder is to really own yourself, and I think also your capabilities and your potential. And at Fahrenheit, it's something we talk about a lot. When I first started Fahrenheit, I was newly married and I had just left years of being at Sweetgreen, at Michael Kors, and then really came up for air and decided that I needed to create change. I realized I had this entrepreneurial bug that I wasn't itching enough. And I think a big part of it was that I wanted to create my own culture. I do feel that I was lucky enough to work for amazing organizations with wonderful leaders and cultures trying to foster people's growth. But for me, I felt like I had more to give. I felt like there was a really unique nuance in the culture that I wanted to create, in how my team treated each other, in how we treated the work, in what we expected and demanded of one another, but also this sort of idea that you can create unity behind shared values and sort of shared goals. And what would it look like for me to create an environment where those values were really, really shared and really fostered among a collective of people, not just me or the company really mandating it? Right when Fahrenheit kind of took off and started to hit its stride, I had this really unexpected life shift. And I decided to separate from my, at the time, husband and go through a divorce. It was an incredibly challenging experience. And at first, I hid it from my team. You know, when you're building a startup in the early days, you are in each other's personal lives, you're in each other's personal spaces. The Fahrenheit team started out of my studio apartment on 12th Street in New York. I don't even know how it really happened. I hired my first employee, then I hired an intern, then one of our employees' sisters started showing up, and then the next, their best friend. And next thing I knew, I had this 6-person incredible team of women showing up every single day and working out of my studio apartment while I was going through this life-altering experience. And I just couldn't bring myself to tell them. I think it was a combination of shame and disappointment, fear of what everyone might think, fear that they might doubt me as a leader. And so I kept it from myself. I kept it from them. And then one day I hit a bit of a wall. I had 10 hours of calls scheduled and I was not there. Physically, I was there, but mentally and emotionally, I wasn't. And I truly kind of hit this point where I couldn't keep it from the team. I had no choice but to, certainly to one person on the team with whom I deeply trusted, tell them what was going on. And I was met with so much compassion and understanding and love. In fact, something I realized was that by not telling them transparently that something at all was going on with me, I left them to their own imagination, right? Is she not excited about Fahrenheit? Is she sick? Is she slacking off? Is something going on in her life that's like holding her back from paying full attention, right? There was this moment where actually my lack of vulnerability and honesty created a bit of what we call at Fahrenheit the swirl. And the swirl is something that is never good in work. It's never good in life, right? When drama or questions or imagination is being swirled and communicated, how do you really shut it down so that everyone can be, again, focused on the greater mission and on the work at hand? And so when I finally told the team in the most simple of ways, like, hey, I'm going through a divorce, not only was I met with so much understanding and compassion, I was met with so much love. And Fahrenheit became this incredibly safe space for me to be 100% myself. I think as a leader, to be in a position where you can really show up every day as who you are, I think as an employee, when you are in an environment where you can show up every day as who you are, it creates a completely different level of trust. And I think of fun, a place where friendships are actually created. And I realized in some ways that the key for me to building a strong team was building strong friendships. In some ways, that goes completely at odds with what most people believe about work. I think for me, what I realized was that I am arguably a workaholic. I love what I do. I wake up every day with this desire to raise brands and to cultivate teams and to support founders. And if I am going to do this all day, every day, if I am going to sleep at night dreaming about brands and I'm going to wake up in the morning energized to go work with my team, I better really enjoy it. And I better love my team. And I am willing to give that love right back. And so I think for me, there was this really big shift in showing up and having to play pretend that I had all the answers, play pretend that I knew everything, and play pretend that I was okay all the time, when the reality is every one of us are going through and experiencing life together, right? We are going through breakups and babies and divorces and marriages and moves and global pandemics all at once together as individuals. And the idea that we are going to be able to leave that stuff at home, I think is a way of the past. I think in this interconnected world where we are literally a touch away, connected at all times, on all cylinders, on all channels, the idea that we can leave who we are at home, I think is a fool's game. And so really what I challenge both myself and my team to do is to show up as our full selves, still have respect for the workplace, still have respect for people's privacy, but not to be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I'm having a rough day. I have something going on at home. Or, hey, you know what? Like, this is going to be a weird month for me because I'm dealing with an issue and I need to talk to my manager about it so that I can feel supported, but also so that I can show up as my best. And so at the end of the day, I think the most challenging time of my life turned out to be honestly one of the greatest lessons and really the foundation for the culture that is Fahrenheit and the culture that I think we try and teach and educate other founders and other companies on how they create it and foster it. I look back now and I'm so grateful for my divorce. When you are going through something like that for the first time, you first think like it'll never be you. You think that you will not be able to handle it. You think that the worst. You think the worst. And I think now looking back on it, I am such a different person because of it in the best ways. I'm such a different leader because of it in the best ways. And I've also eradicated so much fear because I think when you go through the thing you never think you'll go through, I think you can show up on the other side and in some ways feel really empowered. And the greatest gift it gave me was feeling empowered to be fully myself and to not live in fear of anyone or anything. And by doing that, I've been able to cultivate transparency and honesty in a way that I would have wanted when I was in my 20s, in a way that I would have wanted my leaders to show up and give to me so that I could give it back to them. I think as a leader, 6 years in, I can't believe 6 years into Fahrenheit, there are so many things that I am learning and unlearning every day. The first thing that I've unlearned is, as a founder, you never want to have a fixed mindset. You want to go into every challenge, every opportunity with a growth mindset that allows you to continue to be a student and continue to learn, even if most people in your company are asking you for the answers. I think the thing that I've really had to unlearn is that, one, you need to be everything to everybody. I think in my past and in the earlier stages of my career, I really thought I had to have all the answers. And I thought that if I didn't have the answers, it would be a sign of weakness or a sign of failure. And I think in some ways a signal that I was this imposter, right? If I am the head of marketing or the head of social or the head of brand or I'm whatever you might be, if you don't have the answer to a question, it makes you feel like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have this job or maybe I'm not good enough for this role. And what I've really realized and what I've had to unlearn is that actually the strongest of leaders are the first ones to say when they don't have an answer. They're the first ones to raise their hand and say, not only do I not have a clue, but what are the steps to figuring that out with the actual best minds or best inputs to get us to the right answer. And so I think as I've entered into this next phase of my own leadership, the thing that I really challenge both myself and my team on is to be able to be vulnerable. To be able to raise your hand and say, I am not sure how we solve this. I'm not sure the right answer. I don't fully know the truth or what is the right path forward. Because from that place of honesty and vulnerability, we can actually get to the, like I say a lot, the center of the Tootsie Pop, which allows us to get to that right answer in a thoughtful, strategic way versus in a way where you think it's all on you and you're being guided by fear, you're being guided by a fear of failure. You're not showing up as your authentic self because you're afraid of what other people think. And so I think that as I've gotten, again, more senior in my career, the ability to not have an answer is the thing that I've had to learn. And I've had to unlearn this idea that I need to know everything and that I have to be perfect and the right smart one all the time. That actually doesn't create an environment of innovation, of collaboration, of problem solving. And I think it erodes trust when leaders pretend that they know the answer to everything. Whereas a perfect example is during COVID, there was multiple times where I looked at my team and said, all right, guys, buckle up, and I have no clue how to navigate this. I'm going to show up every day with my heart, with my passion, with my vulnerability, with critical thinking, with the 15 years at the time of expertise that I can bring to this conversation. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to ask questions, but no, I don't have the answer. And I'm going to figure it out with you guys side by side, trying to make the best decisions for each of us individually and collectively. By far, the biggest lesson that I have learned in my entrepreneurial journey is to just do it. And I say that both as like a lover of Nike and truly someone who resonates so deeply with that brand strategy, but also do the work, which is a value at Fahrenheit. And I think what it really means is like, there is no challenge too great. There is nothing that is out of your reach. And I really believe that hard work, dedication, passion, and perseverance more than anything will get you anywhere. The amount of times in my life that I was told no. I remember when I was 13 years old, I went to New York and I saw the purple flags waving in Washington Square Park, and I knew that I had to go to NYU. And it became my mission for all of middle school and high school that I was going to get into NYU. And as I got older in high school, every single year was yet another counselor or teacher telling me that I had no shot of getting it. I wasn't in the top of my class. I was in acting school and I wanted to go to Tisch, which is a highly competitive school. Here I was, somewhat of an overachiever, still being told that I couldn't. It just lit a fire under me to do it and to make it happen even more. So not only did I go to NYU and audition and apply to be in that school, but I remember writing on every college application that I was a first choice for NYU. And I banged down the admissions office and begged them over and over and over again to let me meet a faculty member from Tisch School of the Arts. And finally they did. And I do think that to this day, my perseverance and not taking no for an answer is what gave me a shot and what got me into that school. Obviously, it had to be matched with my academics and my college application and my audition, but it was at the end of the day, the hard work, the passion, the perseverance, and the dedication that made that happen. Had one of those things fallen, I don't know that that opportunity would have presented itself to me. And I really think now at most of the milestones or moments of my life where there's been change or when there's been some epic shift, I feel like it is all not because I am smarter than anyone or really more talented than anyone. It is because I show up every day with a full mind and a full heart and I give things my all. And so I really think that the biggest surprise in my entrepreneurial journey, and that I would say for anybody out there, is you are enough. And it is really about how much you are willing to put in that you're going to get out. And just go for it. Just do it. Literally, that is the thing I say to my team every day. Someone's afraid of doing something. Likely it's because they've never done it before. And so they're stopping themselves from trying because they're just afraid. It's like, no, just go do it. What's the worst thing that happens? Maybe you fail. Maybe you fumble. Maybe you miss the mark the first time. But every time you try, you're going to get better and better and better at that thing until you are the expert. And from that place of being an expert is really where the magic starts to happen. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Just go do it, whatever it is. At Fahrenheit, we have this thing we talk about, which is like being a freshman or a senior. And at any point in your career, you might become a freshman again. And you're going to move into a new job. Maybe you're getting a promotion. You're moving from being a manager into a director. And once you hit that director level, you are a freshman again. You're going to be challenged with doing things for the first time. Even if you are 10 years into your career, there is always that moment, that project, that initiative that you've never done before. And you have to really balance, again, the critical thinking with your years of experience, with doing your diligence and the hard work in order to come forth with the answer to the problem or executing that thing for the first time. You know, there are so many times where I look at the team and say, today I'm a freshman. I have never been the CEO of Fahrenheit at this moment of our growth with almost 40 employees, challenged with this situation. So I am going to navigate it today with curiosity, with studying, right? With all of the things that we know make for a great student in some way until there becomes a point where I graduate. And I've done this thing enough where I am a sophomore or a junior or a senior. And sometimes I'll look at the team and be like, yeah, how could you know how to do that thing? Because you've literally never been here before. You've never been in this moment. You've never been in this exact situation. And so how do you approach it through this lens of curiosity? And there is this rhetoric, I think, in the world where we have to, again, have all the answers. And if I think back to that lesson I learned, the vulnerability that comes with owning that you don't have the answer, but that you're going to show up again with your full mind and your full heart, and you're going to try to get this thing done. You're going to do the work. I think that allows for so much more life and real understanding and connection within an organization. And I think for anyone out there that is trying something, you have to remember that everyone you admire, every entrepreneur, creative, founder that you admire out there was a freshman, not only at day one of building their company, but in every single day of leading it. And that is really where I think it shifts the mindset into, one, thinking that a founder or a leader or a CEO out there for some reason has something different than you. The only thing that they have different than you is the years that they've been in school, right? The challenge is that you have to start somewhere. And every single day that you do that thing, every single day that you challenge yourself to get one step further is another day that you are growing. You are growing and you are changing and you are evolving into becoming the thing that today you admire. So we talk about it a lot, but I'm like, be a freshman, be a sophomore, be a junior. If you're a senior, it has a whole different meaning because it probably means that you're ready for that next challenge and that you're about to embark on a whole new world of newness that you've truly never done before, which in some ways is exciting. Everybody wants to be promoted. But I think what people don't realize is it also means you're going back to the drawing board, right? You're now going to be challenged with things that you have not been challenged with before. So I think there's really value into every single step of that experience that we should be really championing more and enjoying in some ways more instead of being afraid of it, right? Own the fact that every single person in your office is at a different level and place. And some people are freshmen, some are sophomores, some are seniors, some are juniors, right? Some of us are doing things for the first time, and that's okay too. What's been really interesting about cultivating this sort of what we call mindful culture and leading with mindful leadership is that there's been so much unlearning. I think a lot of us come from organizations or cultures that are dramatically different. Like I came from an environment or environments that were really competitive, as an example, where I would operate a little bit out of fear, and it wasn't bad. In fact, I think I was in some ways operating at like one of my bests in having this moment where I like was a little afraid every day. Some people are coming from really catty environments. Some people come from environments where they are not able to be themselves, where they don't feel like they have a voice or a seat at the table. And so something that's been really interesting about Fahrenheit is that a lot of people come to us for this culture, but when they get there, they have to learn how to behave within it. I remember one of the sort of most powerful moments was we had a VP of marketing come into the company, someone that I had worked with for many, many years, who I had hired at Michael Kors and with whom I helped kind of navigate their career and get them jobs along the way. And finally, they were like, okay, I want to come be with you at Fahrenheit. And in her first month, she looked at me and she was like, I don't know how to be nice. And I remember being like, what do you mean? And she was like, I have been taught to be bullish, to be aggressive, to be maybe a little bitchy in my previous roles. And I'm really unnerved by the kindness and the niceness that people at Fahrenheit show up with every day, and it's making me uncomfortable. And it was this really interesting experience of having to look at this culture that we created and recognize, okay, in its differentiation is also there's a challenge. And there's a challenge that we're going to have to navigate as more and more people come to Fahrenheit, as we expand our team and we grow, but also as we work with clients around the not only country, but world who have their own cultures, who have their own ways of working. How do we sprinkle a little bit of that Fahrenheit dust? How do we sprinkle a little bit of that mindful leadership and really, hopefully leave them better than we found them? But with it comes real behavior change. And change is hard and it's very uncomfortable. And having to go from being, let's say, in a corporate environment that is really cutthroat to being at a place like Fahrenheit, where all of a sudden we are challenging our teams to lead better, lead differently. I think it's unnerving. And so it's been a really interesting journey for us. For anyone out there trying to create culture on their team and create a sense of community, something to really remind yourself of is that you've got to bring people along for the ride. You can't just demand it. You can't just demand everyone shows up. And there are days where I wonder if anyone at Fahrenheit is listening. There are days that we'll get on and I will give my gospel and I will, preach or set the tones or a mantra for the week or behavior change we want to create. And I will wonder if everyone is listening. And I will wonder if everyone is buying it or if they care. And then something will happen that reminds me of who we are. Someone will navigate a challenge through our values. Someone will lead in a way that makes me immensely proud. Someone will show up with honesty even when it's hard. And it will remind me really of the power of it. But this idea that change takes time. Change is hard. We are living right now in this global shift where not only are employees demanding a new way of leading, but leaders, I think, are asking questions around a new way of also guiding. And it's an amazing shift that we're really proud to be a part of. And we hope, again, that we are creating a little bit of a ripple effect through energy, through the world, through the way we treat our teams, our clients, our partners, our influencers, our creators, our photographers, and just getting everyone to be a little more mindful, a little more thoughtful, and a little bit more connected and collaborative, that we're all kind of in the same journey, and how you show up and treat people matters. It just does. When I was in my 20s, during still this sort of like lean in hustle culture era, I was running on fumes. I look back now and I'm like, how did I even survive that era, right? Like I was running around literally this earth at the speed of light, packing in every possible meeting, every possible work event, every possible panel and discussion and dialogue and opportunity, red eyes and early morning meetings. And I never caught my breath. And I thought that taking care of myself was actually a sign of weakness. I thought that if I needed to sleep or if I needed to pause for a meal, it was a signal that I wasn't a hard worker or that I didn't want it enough. And obviously that is a completely personal journey, and nor do I think that it is a signal really of anything other than maybe my own like stuff that I was dealing with at the time, but I was running. And it wasn't until I came out of my time at Sweetgreen that I realized how important it is to take care of yourself as a leader. We're living in such a fascinating time where wellness is so ever present. Taking care of yourself, whether it is through a regular fitness routine, to your better sleep habits and behaviors, to longevity medicine. Like there is such an extreme of options out there today that are so much more accessible and so much more understood and prevalent than they were when I was growing up in my career. And I think the thing that I realized was that for me to operate at my best, I had to start taking care of myself. And the irony was that what I thought was giving me a service was actually the biggest disservice. And it was impacting not only my ability to, I think, critically think, but my ability to be creative. My ability for my creativity to fly was at direct odds with this hustle energy and mentality that I was living and breathing. And coming from certainly fashion, I think that is an environment that at the time was very fostered. And it wasn't until I kind of shifted gears, went into venture-backed startups, that I actually realized there had to be a better way. It's interesting because I look at sort of, if you were to have like a grid, a graph, the journey of my own self-discovery, self-awareness, self-love, self-help, learning mindfulness, studying with my teacher, Mitra Manesh at UCLA, having a really deep mental health practice, taking care of my body in new and different ways, is sort of like in direct line of growth with my leadership, with my success, and with my ability to lead. And it's not as instantly gratifying, I think, as some of the hustle culture was. Taking care of myself is a longer journey and sometimes a slower journey that really unlocks my ability to thrive and my ability to be creative. And I think that in a way I've had to go against what was learned behavior and also what was culturally learned behavior to actually say, wait a minute, sleeping can mean I'm going to be more creative. It means I'm going to show up as sharper and better in that meeting tomorrow. For me, that was actually a really new learning. And I think part of that is also going through this journey of understanding who you are. For me, I am a night worker. Like I love to critically think and come up with ideas and brainstorm at night. It is where my mind turns on. And so in a sort of traditional working environment, that's not always the best because I have to be on all day long, right? I have to be on in the working hours. I have to be at my best, my sharpest, my most creative. Whereas at Fahrenheit, we have a more fluid way of working, right? If I am going to be living remote, let's say I'm on a different time zone, it's about me creating a system, an ecosystem that works for me to show up at my best. And so we call it like Slack after hours, but Fahrenheit after hours is like where I thrive. I am going to come up with my best ideas probably at midnight or 1 a.m. I am sometimes going to sit and do my reading and my exploring the internet and my digging for creative ideas and inspiration late at night. And that is something that only comes with not only understanding yourself, but I think having the confidence to own it in a way that, again, is not harsh, is not a hard boundary, but is fostering the best out of you as a teammate and as an employee. And so for me, my creativity in some ways, it is like in direct connection to how much I take care of myself, how much I take care of my mental health, how much I foster what works for me and that creativity that in some ways comes out when I'm doing the right things for myself, taking care of myself, but also leaning into the moments that I know work for me. And I wouldn't have been able to even know that about myself had I not figured out more about who I was and what makes me tick. You know, if you think about this idea that we're going through life and the journey of life all together as one, right? Whether it's your team, whether it's a co-founder, whether it's your partner, whether it's a colleague, you are naturally and by essence going through life side by side with this person, maybe for a short time and maybe for a long time. For me, it was really important to recognize the power of those relationships and the importance of them. And there was no greater test than when my father passed away. Almost a year ago, exactly. My father passed away and he was, kind of the love of my life. My best friend, my soulmate, the greatest mentor and father that I could have ever asked for. And it has been a massive blow. More than anything, I think, to our shared passion, I think for life, for creativity. He was a marketer, although he never called himself that. He was a brand builder for sure, a world builder. And I learned everything that I know from him. And the person that I would throw every idea at, every crazy instinct, every crazy idea was him. I thought, like most of us think, I thought that I had to show up and continue to work and continue to operate, and I simply couldn't. I think there's been no other moment in my life where I really had to shut down until this one. It really stopped me in my tracks. What was so interesting was that first, the thing I was so afraid of, which was not being able to lead, turned out to be actually an incredible opportunity. An opportunity for my team, for every single individual throughout the organization that had to show up just a little more, that had to take on that new responsibility, that had to become a freshman in something. Some people that had to try and just figure it out and do the work. But what came from it was this really beautiful kind of orchestra of watching people step into roles that arguably they were actually ready for, that they really knew how to do, that they are excited about. Skills were unlocked. Potential was unlocked. And it was such an unbelievable experience in watching a team show up for one another, but also the magic that can happen and the opportunity that that kind of moment presents. I think for me, what it gave me was clarity. A lot of clarity around what matters, around how I want to continue to build Fahrenheit in this next iteration and this next decade, the things that I felt needed to change, both in my own leadership as well as within the organization. I think I'm not someone who normally looks to take a break as my way of fostering my own clarity or my own creativity. I think I'm somebody that normally finds that creativity in the go, like in the going, in the doing, in the forward momentum, in the trying, in the testing, in the learning, in the failing, like in the execution, I think is where I thrive. It's where I'm the most energized and where for sure I learn the most. But there was something nice about having this moment of pause. And I think this moment of pause being both a lesson in my own leadership, but also really in an opportunity to watch others lead. It's been incredible to see the shift that has been created at Fahrenheit. And ironically, the jobs that I did not need to do when I came back because other people had them and they were good at them, sometimes better than me. And what a cool feeling is that? Once you come to your own leadership with a sense of awareness, the next question is, what do I do with it? Right? It's choice. And we all have choice. I could be aware that I need to quit smoking and make a choice not to do it. I could become aware that we're not crushing that client work and not fix the problem. I could become aware that I need to eat healthier, as many people do, and just decide not to do anything with it, right? So at the end of the day, once you have awareness, then you have to decide what you do with it. And that's where choice comes into play. I think for me, the biggest thing that I have changed as I have grown in my career is that I really try to have the will to lean into the choice. For me, I make a choice every single day. I choose to show up and lead Fahrenheit through the lens of our values. I choose to prioritize my mental health above all else. I will skip almost anything. I will move any meeting. I will not skip therapy. Katrina, my therapist, knows this. No matter what, even on a week where life is grand and things are great, because it's not about going only when I need help. It's about building a muscle. It's about going to the gym and working out my mind every single day in order for me to continue to be better, faster, and stronger. And I think there's so many of us that are suffering. And sometimes suffering is not that deep, right? Sometimes suffering is like, I get anxious before I publicly speak, or I don't like presenting in meetings, or for some reason, every time I'm asked to pull the budgets together, I have like a little bit of anxiety, or I have a fear of, screwing up on this shoot. Like, I don't know what it might be. They don't always have to be the deepest challenges, but we can solve them and we have the choice to work on them. Living in your suffering, living in your frustration is not an answer. It is a choice. And believing that you can't change, believing that you can't fix it is a limiting belief you are telling yourself. I have always been so passionate about what I do, and I've always been so passionate about the work, and I used to let that passion get the best of me. I used to be a little bit dramatic. I used to be a little bit aggressive. I used to be a little bit of a bulldozer. An incredible leader of mine once said to me, Farryn, you are 99% of the time right, but you never convince anyone because you bulldoze. Yelling at everyone is not going to get your way. Telling everybody the 100 reasons why you are right is not going to get your way. But influence people and you will get them to see things your way. First of all, I hated when she told me that. I remember being so angry and being like, ugh, this is bullshit. And like, I don't want to hear this because I was not in a place of growth in order to hear. And then finally one day I was, and I was like, okay, what does it mean to influence people? It means to collectively and soundly make your argument. It means to debate with people. It means to bring people along for the journey and ride. And the old me was someone who used to let my emotions get the best of me at work. And now I try to be incredibly composed at work. At first, it was a challenge. At first, it was hard. At first, I would lash out or I would even cry in a meeting. Now I feel like I have built this muscle over a decade and it comes more naturally. And I think that we forget that we have the will, free will, and choice. The choice to grow is ours. No matter what it is that you are faced with or you are challenged with, I guarantee that you can change your fate and you can make it better, but it has to start with your own desire to change. And then it has to be a commitment to that change, which is where discipline comes in. Like I said, plenty of weeks where I'm like, ugh, I don't really feel like going to therapy. I'd rather watch Netflix. But no. And I do what I need to do in order to keep working the muscle of my mental health because it is so important to me. And because my mind is the one thing that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of this life. And I really want to enjoy it. So I think for me, at the end of the day, the biggest practice that I think as a leader, as an entrepreneur, that you really have to have is this practice of choosing yourself, choosing your business, choosing your values, choosing your work, and choosing the things that are making you suffer, that are giving you fear, that are giving you anxiety, and just choosing to work on them. And some things will be easier, I think, than you think to solve, to change, and to evolve. And some things will be a lifelong journey, and that's okay, because even if you get one step closer, one step safer, one step better, happier, more joyful, more at ease, it's still one step, and that's better than none at all. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fahrenheit Podcast. If you loved this episode or learned something new, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts. See you next time.